Thank you. This is Brian Cartwright joining us today on Wednesday, June 24th from Detroit, Michigan. And we're joined by our Atlanta crew here in this Safety Sunday event. We've got Mr. Mike Stempkowski, who runs the body shop in Buford. And we have our on site detailing and disinfecting chief, Mr. Davon Gaines. And we're going to talk about uh, again, body work, body maintenance, on-site body repair, and cabin disinfecting, and in particular, these innovative electrostatic COVID buster services that we have out there right now. But we're going to focus again today on the on-site body detailing and sanitization and the on-site um, services that we're offering 7 days per week. Again, very briefly, we want to just every time make sure that everyone understands that what we're doing here with Safety Sunday is opening up the conversation for safety related topics for your Amazon Element vans as well as your rental vans. In particular, the Ford Transit, right? We're talking about the Mercedes Sprinter and the Dodge Ram. Those are the vans we're focused on, although we fix GMCs and even Nissans. We're talking about providing that service everywhere that Amazon exists. That's the point of that, by bringing the factory to you. Autonation's made a commitment, and we have the Autonation body team on board here today to make sure that you don't drop routes and that you're fulfilling all the safety requirements of getting your bonuses. That's our mission as a company. Again, we offer on-site pickup and body and mechanical services, factory services, and we're offering these services 7 days a week for people that sign up and give us all of their VIN numbers and organize a managed fleet service under our watch. And that's what we're going to talk about very briefly again today as well. So it all begins with an on-site fleet assessment. When you sign up, we come out, we assess your vehicles. Mr. Stempkowski, Mr. Gaines, our team will come out and actually look at your vehicles, make sure that everything is documented from the beginning, so you're in full compliance with Element and eMentor and Amazon, and that we can make sure everything is maintained in the state that we found it. Now, if we find it on inspection that there's already some corrective action that needs to be taken, we'll give you a plan and schedule it over time. So you'll have a calendar that shows what work is needed, preventative maintenance, any other maintenance, and that will make sure that is done on time in compliance with your Amazon 2.0 contract. So that is what managed fleet service is. That's not the same thing as going to different places trying to handle it yourself. We handle it for you in a single app. And we're going to show you what that looks like when it comes to an app, when that came through this morning, or what it looks like when you put your request into the app and how it's handled. So we talked before, and we're going to reinforce it one more time. One of the benefits of a managed fleet program is that all of your warranty repairs are handled automatically, right? It doesn't have to become a recall where now you got to bring a whole bunch of vans in and disrupt your flow. We're looking out at those things that are happening to your van, and frankly, only the factory can do that. As we heard before from Mr. Mike Eaton, for example, from the Ford dealership in Union City. You heard this from Jake Doherty from the Mercedes dealership in Marietta, that the dealer has this information and this database of information, and we do too, on these vehicles, so that we can make sure that you don't have downtime and drop routes because of something that either is a recall or could or should be or will be in the future become one because they affect safety. So if you don't get out in front of these safety issues, they get in front of you. So that's automatic warranty. PM Plus is an important program of ours, mainly for your Element, and also we're saying for your Merchants Fleet vehicles as well, that allows us to give you the advantages of what you've done with your PM programs and all of your customer pay. So that by bringing us on site to do your PMs for your Mercedes vehicles, for example, when it's time for you to get this detailing and disinfecting we talk about, you get discounts. So by organizing all of your fleet activities at the same time, you're able to take advantage of that, not only financially, but also in terms of time and difficulty. We are making sure that no one has any unintended events occur in their van. That's PM Plus. Now, Today, we're going to talk about on-site services. We're going to talk about the 7-day services, non-paint body repair, tire services, batteries that we do on site, even on Sundays, we've done that. And with particular focus on the van detailing, cabin disinfecting, and tail lights, rear view mirrors, those things that happen on a regular basis. So again, we talked about bringing the factory to you. We see that van that you see, the one-stop logo that you see on the vans, it means just that. When you see our vans out there in your parking lot, we're servicing the whole van, right? We're picking up your van and bringing it into the factory, into the dealer for factory service. But if it can be done on site, we'll do it on site because it's most expeditious. We can do more. For example, we did 32 warranty repairs last week on the Mercedes. They were done on site, right? So Jake came out on site in one of these vans, took care of it. There was no disruption to your flow of your routes, and everybody was able to get on, with their business. Otherwise, you'd have to take the van, bring it into the dealer. It has to sit there parked. You can only bring a certain number at a time. You and your, managers or your drivers have to actually do all that, and it becomes extremely difficult for you to keep track of your entire fleet when a recall happens, right? Or when certain things happen that you're not expecting. So bringing the factory to you with the one-stop on-site service is a benefit of the managed fleet programs that we're discussing today. So today we're going to bring on here very shortly, and we're going to talk about a specific example of a door repair that Mr. Stempkowski, before you saw him talk about a complete body service that he did where the roof of a transit was damaged, and he fixed it in 5 days. We did that, I think, last week. Today we're going to talk about more simple things that can be done on site, or they can be brought into him and done and in and out, because we know what they are. We've seen them frequently. We already understand what's happening with the parts and can get you in and out with those kinds of services. So what it looks like when it comes through the app is this. When you come to your app, that free one-stop app that everyone should have signed up for, and people have, this is one that came in this morning. It shows everything you need to know about the vehicle, the van number, that it's an element, the keys are in the cup holder, it's a transit, same day in and out, door or internal outfitting repair. The van needs the side door lock fixed. I can't tell you how many of those things happen to us. We've had situations where the locks on these Fords, we're just continuously having the same problem. I think I've seen this particular problem on those transits about 11 or 12 times myself in Atlanta alone and across the rest of the country. I mean, we've documented it and we keep track of it. We'll have to look in our database because this just came up today. But we probably see more than 100 of these exact same things. So again, is that a factory recall? No. Is that something that they're going to reach out to you and tell you about? No, it's just something that happened to you. But if it happened to you, it happened to everyone else. When we're out there detailing your vans, we're going to look at these things and see, is it likely that something like that could happen? And how can we have Mr. Stempkowski fix that for you before it becomes a safety issue? And now you're pulling the van out of service, risking a dropped route just for something that's on a relatively new vehicle, right? Or incurring additional expense that you didn't need. So we're going to turn the conversation over right now, before we get to Mr. Stempkowski, but to Mr. Davon Gaines. Mr. Gaines has been out here detailing vans, 50 at a time, doing a great job. And also now we're moving into this electrostatic disinfecting. We call it COVID busters. They look like Ghostbusters. But when they come in with these electrostatic devices, what they're able to do is spray this disinfecting everywhere in the van, where if you're just wiping them and trying to spray it yourself, that doesn't help you because the virus gets inside the air conditioning ducts, they get under the seats, they get into places where you can't see. And the virus can affect you for days in areas that you can't see and get at. With electrostatic, it gets everywhere and preserves, at least for several days, the pristine status of it. So cabin disinfecting is a specific service. Even if you're doing the outside through a drive-through car wash, or if the outside of the van looks perfect, we still need to get out in front of this disinfecting and keeping them disinfected. Frankly, they're saying every week, because this COVID has not gone away and it's coming back. It's coming back in each of the states where they said it was going away, if you look at it. So because we have a vehicle that's being driven by different people all day long, getting out and around people, the likelihood of this thing happening in our vans is greater than in just a passenger vehicle being driven by one person. So that having been said, we're going to bring on Mr. Dave Von Gaines. Mr. Gaines has been detailing and washing these vans for, is that over 20 years, Mr. Gaines? You started in middle school, is that how did that happen, Mr. Gaines?
Yes, I was ushered in the family business.
Family business. Talk about it. You got a car wash there in Atlanta?
I've got two of them, actually. I've got a hand car wash and a detail shop located in Snellville, Georgia.
In Snellville, Georgia. So he's actually servicing all three stations out of Snellville. This one here that you see was a parking lot on Graham Road servicing DAT3. But certainly Lawrenceville, obviously Smyrna, it doesn't matter. We'll be on site with Mr. Gaines. Mr. Gaines, can you give the folks just a little bit of insight into just frankly how detailing works? How do you get out there and why you've been successful at detailing these vans for these 20 some odd years you've been doing it?
Well, you got to pay attention to the details. Detailing is in the eye, so you got to get the things that people wouldn't normally see, and you got to stand behind your work. Detailing
is in the eye. That's an interesting. We'll have to. Can we patent that? That's a good saying. Detailing is in the eye. I like that. It tells us something. So let's talk a little bit more about why do they call it detailing? Why do they just not call it washing? What's the difference?
Oh, the difference is there it gets in the details, all the little things, all the cup holders and the knobs and the door line, everything that people touch is what you really want to disinfect and wipe down and pay attention to when you're cleaning.
Well, that's interesting because you're literally saying everything that everybody touches, everything people will touch as they're in these vans, and because they're out there 8-10 hours a day, they're being driven 7 days a week. They really live inside these vans, in and out, going into and out of situations. They may go out into a situation doing delivery where the virus may exist and bring it into the van and not even know it. How can you say? You can't see it. And you can be going, as they say, asymptotically. You can go around without displaying the symptoms, and no one, can tell that they've got that, and then someone else gets it. So what advice would you give when we would talk about the cabin detailing to these folks? How often do you think it should be done?
I would say maybe at least a minimum once a week.
Once a week.
The disinfectant is going to last about 3 days in there.
Now, let's say someone has a fleet of, say, 30 vans, 25 Sprinters or Transits standard issue, and say 5 rentals, right? And like with the one you did here in this picture, you did 50, right? You went out and did 50. So how many vans can your crew do? And you're doing multiple crews, right? We're doing crews for each of the areas of Atlanta, so you'll be simultaneously running multiple crews. You may not see Mr. Gaines because he's running the crews, but how many vans can a crew do when they get out there with detailing, like you see here on the left? The disinfecting, that goes even faster, right? So even if they don't get the detailing, they do get an idea how long it would take for someone's entire fleet to get disinfected.
Okay, the disinfecting would be faster than the detailing, so if it was, say, a fleet of 50, I could probably get them all disinfected in about 5 hours, maybe 5-6 hours.
Okay, so essentially, to give them some idea that, say, the crews are coming in at about 5:30. Would you say, generally speaking, they're coming in off their routes, depending on what obviously what cycle they're on. But let's say your first wave or first cycle, you're coming in for 5:30. Mr. Gaines, you're out there at basically 5 o'clock. Right? Or your crew is out there at 5 o'clock, and all their vans are done by 9-10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, let's say, that's the wash and disinfecting, or just disinfecting? Or is that the whole detailing?
That's the whole bang right there. That's everything.
That's everything, okay? And so that's outside, inside, cabin, back. Tell them what you do. When you do the detailing of the van, shining the tires. Tell them what goes into that. What work is performed there?
Okay, well, it's a basic wash on the outside. We clean the wheels and we shine the tires. We do the windows inside and out. Then most of the work comes inside, though.
Hmm.
Inside, we do the disinfecting. We wipe down everything. We armor all the dashboard. We clean out the door jams.
Hmm. So the Armor All, that means something because when a driver gets in a van that feels clean, and Armor All gives you that nice kind of clean smell, and you know it's disinfectant, they feel good, right?
Hmm.
And they know that the owners care about them because they want them in a clean, safe van. And we're talking about safety Sunday. Obviously, brakes, tires, and things like that are safety. But this has become a significant safety thing because, even if you don't get the COVID virus, right, you don't have to say it's that extreme. But it's important that we just keep the interior clean and smelling good and they feel good about what they're doing. And because, we're talking 7 days a week, it's very hard for an owner, operator, manager, or driver to keep up every van exactly the same way. You may have one that's very conscientious, they do a good job. Another one, nobody's watching, not so much. Who would know? But with you, you keep everybody at the same level of sanitization and
Hmm.
cleanliness. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes. So before we move to Mr. Stempkowski, thank you, Mr. Gaines. Do you have any further advice that you give to folks about how they could just simply, if there were one or two things you tell an owner that's got a fleet of, say, 30 or 50 vehicles, in between the times that we're doing the detailing for them on site or in between the times that we're doing anything like that, what would you tell them as some things they should be looking into to try to keep the vans at least sanitary on their own?
To keep them sanitary on their own, I would guess say keep some sanitizer around.
What kind do you recommend? There's
Man,
so,
I
there's so
don't.
many out there.
Yeah, as long as it's got a strong alcohol base, that's all that matters. As long as it's
Mhm.
65% alcohol.
Okay, that's important. 65% alcohol. And one last thing before we go, they keep saying, well, it's not going to happen in Atlanta because the virus doesn't like heat, and it's hot in Atlanta, right? So are they safe just because it's hot in Atlanta? Is that true? Do they have to
No,
not worry about that?
no. Actually, Atlanta's numbers are back on the rise now.
Really? And I'm in Detroit. I'll be back in Atlanta next week, but I was there a couple of weeks ago, and it was hot. Where we were out there, it was
Uh,
94 degrees. I thought I was going to die. Just, I don't know how you did it. I know how I did it, drinking fluids. We won't say what fluids,
uh-huh.
but I was just drinking a lot of fluids out there. But but they're back on the rise anyway, right? It was 94
Yeah.
degrees 3 weeks ago, and the virus is back. So obviously heat doesn't stop this thing, does it?
Not that we know of.
I don't think we know what can stop that thing, but I know what we can do is stop it from affecting the drivers in our DSP's vehicles by doing this. Thank you so much, Mr. Gaines. I appreciate you. We'll be seeing you next week. We'll be back. Now we want to get over to Mr. Mike Stempkowski. And again, he's been with us. He was with us last week. We talked about the collision centers with a DSP focus. I want to kind of just stay just narrowly focused on, again, the example. Now let's go back for a second. Let's go back a little bit and go back to the example of what we had here of this order right here. Now, Mr. Stempkowski, you've been taking the orders, fixing the vans, but let's just take this one. This came in at about 10:30 this morning in another part of Atlanta, but you're going to see these on a regular basis. When you see something like this, internal outfitting repair, van needs side door fixed. Now, I know you haven't seen this van, but you've seen many of them. Mike, can you talk about generally the kinds of things that will go into just looking at fixing a door and keeping doors safe? It happens quite a bit.
Yeah, what I've seen in the past on these, it can be multiple things. Most likely, the common issue is going to be the latch itself. There's what they have on these latches, some plastic around there, and that seems to break down and bind up into the latch area, and causing it not to be able to operate the latch mechanism to hit around the striker piece on there. You can take and if that happens, then it doesn't want to operate, and then they're slamming the doors, denting the doors, causing cosmetic damage on the outside. So the latch would have to be replaced as soon as it starts working. You can try to lube them up. That's not going to help anything. The latch would have to be replaced on these at all. And by slamming and over slamming them, you're now denting the doors. A lot of times what we've seen in the previous one was that the bolts at the bottom where the guides and the slides where it runs in the track loosened up and we're out of adjustment. So it tweaks the whole door and per se, and you're really in a mess then. So the whole door would have to be adjusted. So when it starts to go and you start to have problems, that's when you really want to get it in and replace right away. Otherwise, you're going to start banging up your door. You're going to start when it doesn't close right. You can destroy the inside of the door where the latch is because it's not lining up with the door and it's hitting the striker. So now you're banging into the door and bending. Destroying the inner structure of the door itself to the point if it goes too far, then you would actually have to replace the door because you're destroying the structure of it.
Well, let me ask you a question. First of all, let me ask the dumb questions, right? I can just do that, right? What's a striker?
Striker is what's on the body of the vehicle where the latch actually latches to keep the door closed.
So the striker, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's a metal bar that's held in with a plate, basically. It's usually a couple screws, and it's a bar raised out. And the striker, when you close the door on there, it actually latches onto that the way your latch works. And as it hits the bar, it latches over it, and that's what closes it and keeps the door locked and closed over it from opening while you're driving down the road.
So a striker is a stationary fixture, and the door opens and closes and locks down on the striker.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah, I'm just saying, because there's folks that don't know. And, now I've just learned something. So what you're saying is it could be the striker itself getting loose.
Striker could loosen up, but at the end of the day, what I've seen a lot of times is it's been the latches of what fails. And when the latch fails, you can be driving down the road, make a turn, and the door can swing open. And if you've got packages there, you may lose your packages.
That happened. In fact, that happened in Atlanta to a customer, and it actually, when these, we didn't have the Fords when we were operating. They didn't have them. Nobody had them yet. But it did happen with the Mercedes in the very beginning when they first came out. The Mercedes problem is a different problem than the Ford in the way they're designed and everything. But that did happen, and we actually had to go in the middle of the route. This is what we're also saying, why it's not just safety, it's a bad situation when it happens. We had to go send another van out. We had the backup van to do it. It was one of ours. We had our vans to go out and back ourselves up. We took the packages out of that one van and got the driver back on their route, and they got going and took the other van and back in. That has happened. And this guy right here brought one in because that's happened to him, because that's unsafe from other things. Can you talk a little bit briefly, because we did see in a Mercedes one, I should have brought the pictures. This just came in of how we did that. We'll talk maybe next week. We took pictures of how we took the door and what happened. And as it turned out, it was a cable. It turned out that there were some sharp edges in there that could have cut the driver and injured the driver. Have you seen that, Mike?
Yeah, there's a lot of sharp edges. There's a lot of sharp things inside the doors and everything in there. If someone's if they're messing around with something they don't understand, they can actually get hurt themselves. There's an opportunity to pinch their fingers, cut their hands. A lot of times, if you cut your hand on something, you may have to get a tetanus shot. You're opening yourself up to maybe getting an infection, something like that. You don't really want to do that. My guys have been trained through training to basically, we know how to adjust things, how to work on things. They invest in their tools. We invest in tools here at the shop. The company does, and invest in training every year. We spend a lot of money to update the training and make sure that we're up to date on all the equipment and all the needs on these vehicles that we have to work on.
That's something that was raised by, I think, Mr. Mike Eaton last week or the week before. I think 2 weeks ago, he talked about the master certification, the 7 years, the base experience of your folks compared to just, say, the neighborhood body shop or the person whose cousin just chose to say he could do body work. You have some standards that you have adhered to all of these years. And Mr. Stempkowski, can you talk about you? Let's talk about you for just a second. We talked about Rick being in this thing. We talked about a second, Rick, the customer here. We talked about Mr. Davon Gaines being into this for more than 20 years. How many years have you been in this business?
37 years.
37?
Mm-hmm.
Holy mackerel. You look 37. What are you doing? You're doing something right.
I've been in this industry since 1983.
Wow, my goodness gracious. I don't think I can remember back to 19. I do remember 19. Wow, my goodness, it was 37. So I think that in all those years, that means something, right?
Yeah, I've learned, I've been on the parts side of business. I've been on the collision side of it. I spent 16 years doing parts, wholesale parts, body shop parts, and I've spent 21 years doing the collision side of it. So I've got more years on the collision side of it. And on the collision side of it, I've spent more years in training. I'm Toyota certified. My techs are Toyota certified as well. We are working towards Volkswagen certifications, Hyundai certifications, and other certifications. We have all the equipment. Every year we are recertified, so we have training every year, and I can't stress it enough. The training that goes into these cars, and it's just not that we use Toyota. We have the equipment and the computer systems here that we get our access to all the manufacturers. So if there's something that stumps us, we can go into the computer and pull up, put the information in, and get the information we need for Fords, Chevys, Chryslers, anything that we need to. And if it's not in there, we have access that we can send a request and get that information sent to us. So we take a lot of time and effort to get that information, because compared to other shops out there where they would just kind of wing it, we have to make sure that all our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted, because we are not going to put an inferior product on the road. I refuse to, and my technicians refuse to, because it's our reputation and quality of our shop, and we have a lot of repeat business. I have vehicles sent to me from out of state. I just fixed 2 cars that were done at other shops, and one of them was fixed in Florida. Another one was fixed in state here. But throughout the years I've been here, I fix cars from Texas. I fix other cars from Florida. My shop is known for refixing other people's work.
Really? So you're the mechanic's mechanic, the collision guy's collision guy, right?
We fix what they didn't fix right the first time. You know the old saying, what you said last week, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. Well, yeah, but honestly, we're going to do it right. The last thing I want is, and my techs want, is something to go out there that's not right with our name on it, because we all take pride in what we do, and that's a big thing. We have pride in everything that we put out of here.
You know what I love about you Autonation guys? Everybody to a person. It's personal. There's a personal, workmanship. There's just a commitment to quality that you just don't see anymore. And before we go, thank you, Mike. I want to appreciate you giving. Mike, just one more thing. You mentioned parts. What, if you wouldn't mind? I do, again, from Detroit. I'm used to the old cars in the 70s that were like all steel, right? They were hard. The bumpers were thick, and you were like, but they weighed a lot more. In today's these vans in particular, what would you say about 2 things? Plastic, where they used to have steel, right? And what does that mean? And and also these Chinese knockoffs. We were doing reconditioning of vans a year ago on scale, and you really had to look at some of them, but you could look and tell the knockoffs. But if you didn't really look, they've gotten better with these. And I don't want to say something bad about China per se, but look, they're not the right part. They're cheaper substitutes that body shops are putting in there because they can, and the customer doesn't know any better. But then something else happens, and you quickly find that you've depreciated the value of the asset. And if we're talking about an element van that Amazon is reimbursing you for, they're not interested in seeing anything other than the correct factory part on that body of that vehicle. Can we talk about that a little bit, about how you would even have an idea whether you got the right parts or not?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the manufacturers are going to have with their parts. You're going to get them. They're going to come in a manufacturer's package, manufacturer's box. They'll have a little replacement, little sticker on there where it's going to have the manufacturer's logo and stuff on there. And as we talked last week, a lot of the insurance companies where we were talking about the difference between an insurance and customer pay, the insurance companies, a lot of them are going to push towards the aftermarket parts on there. And when they push for that, that's where they're going to, the aftermarket parts where and when I say aftermarket parts, it's going to be your Taiwanese parts. And when they push for that, your body lines may be different. The bracket mountings may be different. It's not going to be the same strength steel. It's not going to be the same gauge thickness on some of them. And at the end of the day, it's not the same that came on the vehicle. So I could take two fenders at the exact for the same, let's say a Ford, and I can try to put the aftermarket one on, and I'm going to fight with it. I can take the one right out of the box from the factory, paint it, put it right on, and it's going to line right up. It's just because the stamping and everything there. When they stamp the aftermarket ones, they may be using the same stamps from the manufacturers, but they're worn out stamps. And when they're worn out, which means that they are worn out to the point where they're misaligned, they've been beat up so bad, and they don't fit. And we run into this all day. Bumper covers, fenders, headlights. The stuff is just, if we want the cars to go in and out fast, we want to use the OEM parts. And it's the best and the fastest. And if it's my vehicle, I'm going to push for my OEM parts to be put on that vehicle.
OEM being original equipment manufacturer.
Yes, OEM is original equipment manufacturer.
Right.
Plus, if you've got sensors, you've got crash sensors, sensors on it. If you put anything but if you put aftermarket on there, you may be affecting the crashability of the vehicle. So if it gets in an accident and you've got non-OEM parts on there, your sensors may not react to the same way as an OEM bumper and fender would. So you're taking your airbags, reaction time may be different. If you've got ADS systems on there where following with the mirrors and the cameras and stuff like that, you may not have a true reaction time with that. So a lot of that, especially now, especially windshields too, it's big into that. If you do not put the right windshield in the car, it may not recalibrate. And if it does not recalibrate and you're going down the road and you're wanting to follow behind the car and use your collision radar system and stuff like that, you may have you may be in another wreck.
So it could certainly be unsafe. Certainly.
It can be, yes.
There is a risk of it being unsafe. It's not just cosmetics. It's not just looks. It's function. And wouldn't you say
on the newer vehicles? Yeah, you don't. With the electronics and everything nowadays, even the manufacturers have put out position statements and on these vehicles that where you need to use OEM parts. You need to do pre and post scans. You need to do no inner structure LKQ, which is like, kind, and quality, which is basically used parts. There's a lot of stuff that you have to follow and be trained up on and know what's going on with each vehicle.
Well, thank you, Mike, for giving us this insight. 37 years of doing something, you think you get to really understand this stuff. You live and breathe it. And so
every day is something different.
Every day. Yeah. And the thing is, see, as I get older, I'm learning something every day, but I'm forgetting stuff that I used to know. Yeah. So it's about a wash with me, But
I'm right behind you.
You know what I mean? We just, so this is one of those things. But thank you, Mike. I really appreciate this. I think, the DSP owners out here, and that's why we're recording this, because, when we did it, we may, because we're car guys, understood some of this stuff, but this can be unsafe. We call it Safety Sunday because we do stuff on Sundays that when others don't to keep you safe, right? And it's not just the idea that we're, doing body work here or mechanical work here or detailing here or disinfecting here. No, it's the whole package. It's how you keep your people safe and on the road, because if you don't, you will not make money. You will not. You will eventually, you think you're saving some money, but all we need is, we talked about a number of things. We talked about the sliding door that we talk about here. Someone can get cut, or it opens up and the packages are exposed. Now you've got losses beyond just you. You could cause another accident with someone else with that door opening, and those happen. That happened here today, right? These things do occur. They may not have happened to you if you're an owner yet, but if you're doing it right and running enough routes, sooner or later, like you said, an hour later, it's going to catch up to you. So if we, like you said, do it right the first time, right? Understand what it means to do it right. That's why this experience is necessary, being shared every week. We try to add more of this knowledge out there. Take the time to understand what it means that your principal asset, other than your people, which is the van, right, is the one thing you must maintain and maintain correctly. And that's what it's all about. So, thank you very much, Mike, Davon, for joining us today. I think if we learn anything today, and we'll just go back to this one more time, if we learn anything today, that maintaining your body is also safety, right? Safety for the drivers with the disinfecting, safety for the drivers and potentially other people if there's a crash by not putting the right parts on, safety by the doors not being handled correctly. And one last thing that he did say, just to be summarizing, that if you don't have somebody looking regularly at these vans, and you're slamming these doors, you could incur a much greater expense not too far down the road by having to replace the whole door or doing way more than if you caught it early. So having us come out, detailing the vans, looking at the vans, inspecting the vans, like we said, assessing, touching those vans on a regular basis, we could see something like the latch or the striker or the cables behind them, things you can't see that you don't know are even there, that we know are there, that are loose, right? That can be fixed before you end up with a safety problem or at least a big bill. Right? So these are the kinds of things, they may seem like little details, but they're not when it happens to you. So again, everyone, we appreciate you attending this week's Safety Sunday, June 24th. Again, Brian Cartwright out of Detroit, Michigan, Mr. Mike Stempkowski and Davon Gaines in Atlanta, servicing the Atlanta region. Thank you for joining us on Safety Sunday, and everyone, be safe.